afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Nicolas Lafrenière, and on behalf of the Royal Society of Canada, I'm very pleased to welcome you to this year's webinar on the Frontiers Planet Prize process in Canada. We're grateful to see so many institutional representatives, researchers, and partners joining us as we begin the 5th edition of the prize. Your continued engagement is what makes this initiative possible, and we appreciate you taking the time to be here. As many of you know, the Frontiers Planet Prize continues to grow in scale and impact each year, bringing together institutions from around the world to recognize and accelerate research addressing the planetary crisis. Canada has been proud to participate since the prize's launch, and we are pleased to continue supporting this international collaboration in the 5th edition. It is now my pleasure to introduce Gilbert de Gregorio. Gilbert has played a central role in the development and growth of the Frontiers Planet Prize since its launch, working closely with colleagues across Frontiers to shape and advance the initiative. He recently transitioned into the role of Director of Communications, where he leads communications and media engagement efforts with a focus on amplifying the prize's visibility and impact. So with that, I will now turn things over to Gilbert, and I will return following his presentation to discuss the RSE process.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. A very warm welcome and good morning to you all. Thank you for the kind introduction, Nicolas. So you can consider me your point of contact for this process until we do have someone who's going to be taking the lead from the prize as I transition to a new position within communications. But nonetheless, I'm really excited to be sharing the prize. For those of you who have, I see some names I recognize. So for those of you who have already engaged with the prize, I would say a lot of this is similar to previous editions. We like to say that repetition is the best form of pedagogy. So I hope this is a great way for you to have an overview of everything that's happening with the prize. What we share here is also available on our website and also on our brochure. Nothing is new. I've just put this in a way to make it very simple for everyone to understand what the prize is about. So without further ado, let me get kicked off by sharing what is the prize. Our tagline and what our mission is to mobilize science for a global green renaissance. We are currently the world's largest science competition that celebrates innovative breakthrough science that drives real-world transformation. Our goal is to ensure healthy lives on a healthy planet. And how do we do that? Each year, 3 prizes of $1 million are awarded to these 3 researchers based on 1 research article. And what is particularly special about the prize is that this prize money is used specifically to accelerate and scale up and amplify the impact of the award-winning research. We work the prize on an annual cycle with a cadence that allows us to collapse the timeline of getting scientific consensus, which is very much needed now to understand our planet, but also to allow the fast take-up of solutions on an annual basis. And we need it now because the planetary polycrisis is impacting us day to day. And through this mechanism, it's a great way for us to mobilize the entire academic community. And we have to all be focused on enabling researchers to come up with transformative, impactful research that are actionable solutions. I'm sure very many of you already know the framework of the 9 planetary boundaries. This is the premise and the foundation of our prize, put together in 2009 by the late Will Steffen and Professor Johan Rockström from the Potsdam Institute. These are the 9 geophysical properties of our planet which define our planet's health. And most importantly, we must stay within the safe operating space of our planet to avoid reaching our high-risk zones, or the tipping points once breached will lead to irreversible catastrophic environmental changes. Unfortunately, we're seeing the situation get dire after each update. When initially we saw climate change and biosphere integrity being impacted, right now, as of last year, or actually early this year, ocean acidification has just entered the high-risk zone, taking us out of the safe operating space, meaning that there are only 2 left where we can safely say that we are thriving within the resilience of our planet. So this is why it's extremely important to have this prize, and taking our mission and the planetary boundaries framework together, we want to mobilize the entire academic ecosystem. That means active researchers on the ground, institutions like yourselves, national academies, all to join forces and find these solutions. Once we bring them together, we want to ignite a sense of competition, a bit like the Olympic Games of planetary health, ensuring that each country puts on their podium and gives a gold medal their researcher who is recognized in accelerating scientific breakthroughs. And through that, we then bring in our cohort of Olympian athletes or our award-winning scientists, putting them in contact with decision makers who can adopt and catalyze their work to drive real-world impact across policy and practice. So we can think of what we're going to achieve. We're putting voice back, or giving a voice back to scientists and enabling systems change by building new regulation, new market incentives, transforming investment opportunities, businesses, and also allowing new policies to be picked up at local level, regional, national, and also multilateral. And this is a way we can mobilize society at large. This is where we really need the voice of science and planetary intelligence to get us back into a safe operating space. So, our nomination community, what makes the prize very unique is the fact that we're a very small team. There are 5 of us in the foundation, but we're supported by great partners, including the Royal Society of Canada, one of our academies, and a range of other academies, our donors, and the International Science Council, all working together to emulate award-winning science. And this is how the process works. Our active scientists on the ground who publish their research, there are institutions that they're affiliated to, the National Academies of Science who federate great research on a national level and put them through to our independent jury of 100 who select a national champion per country and the 3 international champions, each of whom win the $1 million prize. We started the prize back in 2022 with one call for participation, with 233 institutions joining. Once we closed our edition last year, the 4th edition, we reached 735 institutions who registered across 69 countries. And what's very interesting to see here is that we have a truly global spread, especially across sub-Saharan Africa and the global South and Latin America with a huge growth. But another thing that we found extremely interesting is that despite all of the contentious, let's say, geopolitical climate we're seeing right now in terms of funding climate-related research, the US is leading the pack with over 110, I think 115 institutions joining, with all the Ivy League institutions joining last year. So we're becoming a truly global prize. And what's really beautiful about this is it's not just growth and visibility and the credibility of the prize, but it's showing the shared commitment of all scientists and institutions about ultimately a global challenge that impacts us all. And we're all working together to make sure we bring out these solutions. And with them, we work with our national academies. So we have the RSC with us today. So we're covering very many large, let's say, powerhouses of research, including China, Brazil, the US, Germany, but other areas of the world as well that recently joined. And we have the Pacific Academies of Sciences that recently got launched. And as we know, are extremely vulnerable to the impacts of climate change and have a heavy amount of loss and damage associated with climate adaptation for them. And it's great to see their voice and the local communities who are getting impacted have a voice to put forward their research and are part of this movement as well. And then last and not least, right at the top of the pyramid, we have our undisputed excellence that's represented by our jury of 100 leading international researchers that spread across all different disciplines and really embody the importance of transdisciplinary research and diversity of thought. Diversity not only because of where they're based and where they are in their research career, but very importantly to note that solutions can come from any domain. Not just environmental scientists and engineers with technical solutions. We also have social scientists. We have those working in the legal sector. Why? Because these solutions can come from any domain. It just has to build a transformative pathway. And how that happens is co-creation with those individuals who actually can drive change on the ground. And right at the helm of the jury, we have Professor Johan Rockström, the director of the Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research. And his role is to arbitrate the discussions and the evaluations that happen in complete independence to select the national champion from each country and the 3 international champions. We're also supported by our advisory board, and these are a range of individuals from very influential and leading institutions and organizations that allow us to do two things. Firstly, raise the visibility of the prize across a scientific network, and this happens with Lise Corsten from the African Academy of Sciences, who's the president, and also Peter Gluckman, president of the International Science Council. But then we also have under individuals who help make sure we build a transformation pathway to build impact. We partnered with the Villars Institute and also the World Economic Forum. Lee Howell used to be the managing director of the Davos Summit at the WEF for the past 20 years. And working with the Villars Institute, we ensure that our champions are embedded in discussions to drive systems leadership, intergenerational collaboration, specifically to build a nature positive economy. So, all that being said, how does the prize work? So, a lot of you have seen this before. There is no change here. We're doing this exactly the same way. We are opening the call for participation for all of the institutions to join. So, up until the 31st of September, any university can join as a national nominating body, and equally the academies. Your role here as an institutions is essentially to do the same things we do every year to find and scope out the best science from your institution, all based on a leading research article. What you would do is select the lead scientist who is representing that article, select the top three that you've received from your cohorts, and then share it with your academy, the NRB, who does the same thing on a country level, selects the top three, sends it to the jury of 100 who engages in their 2 rounds of voting. And then we have our award ceremony, which takes place this year. We have the 4th edition taking place at Davos in January, with the same thing happening in 2028 as well. And in terms of the criteria, every competition has a criteria. It's really important to note that scientific excellence should always be the key feature. It's all based on one research article that has been accepted for publication in an established peer review journal with transparent publication and peer review processes. The acceptance date has been moved by 1 year. So it's now in between the 1st of November 2024 to the 31st of October 2026. And as I mentioned before, it's open to all disciplines, regardless of your background, as long as it's focused on planetary boundaries and it presents original research findings, reviews, and syntheses. One thing to note is, whilst we're very open with the kind of research that can be submitted, we do not accept books nor book chapters or any grey literature that hasn't undergone peer review and has been published in an international journal with a DOI. But the research itself, what should be focused on? It's very important to note this is a solutions-based competition. We are looking for research that outlines these actionable solutions or pathways to these solutions that can be implemented commercially in policies or through collective action on the ground. It has to allow us to find a pathway to keep global development within planetary boundaries. In the same vein, it shouldn't be something that's kept completely detached from our understanding of our planet. It needs, in some way, explicitly or implicitly, advance our understanding of planetary boundaries or the quantification of these boundaries, and allow us to have an implication of how we adopt planetary boundary thinking across the pathway of deployment in different sectors and activities. And last and not least, we know that the planetary polycrisis is a polycrisis. It's impacting all planetary boundaries. So please do not put forward any solutions that only focus on one one challenge in silo. Here's an example. Solar geoengineering is something we've seen is quite contentious, but here the main goal is to reduce our carbon, to mask the effects of climate change, but it can also exacerbate other planetary boundaries. And that's the kind of integrated thinking we need to be approaching when we think about these solutions. And if you ever want to have an idea of what does this actually mean in practice, I invite you to go onto our website and check out the champions from our past 4 editions. They really embody this transformational science. And here's one example. We have Dr. Petra Holden from South Africa, who is a co-international champion from the first edition. And what her work was looking at was understanding the impact of non-native tree species in the Cape region of South Africa and how that's impacted both biodiversity and water shortages, long-term droughts. And by deploying nature-based solutions, removing these invasive species, she was able to not only reboot biodiversity over a 5-year time period, but also restore those freshwater systems which were dependent on the local populations around Cape Town. So this is the kind of work that we mean when we talk about transformational science. We've had a lot of things happening over the past year or so, and we're really pleased to share that from our third edition, we brought the international champions for the first time to the Frontier Science House in Davos, which happened in January this year. And here we had dedicated roundtables and keynotes that were moderated by Johan Rockström that brought forward Secretary Generals of UN agencies, CEOs of leading organizations such as Novartis, and lots of AI companies. And here we're thinking about how can we integrate planetary intelligence into their business models, into their policies, and generating real impact. And here's a couple of examples. We had Zara Kalantari, who won last year from Sweden, and she worked with the European Innovation Council to define how we can use nature-based solutions in our urban planning to reduce carbon footprints in 56 EU cities, and how that can have a significant reduction in our CO2 emissions footprint. Equally, Zia, he connected with Nestle and a range of other different stakeholders to talk about how we should be diversifying our farming practices to be a lot more sustainable, but also driving socioeconomic well-being for farmers long term, who are at the forefront of being impacted by climate extremes. And I'd like to share an exciting update from our fourth edition champions, which got announced on Earth Day. Here is our largest cohort we've had this year, and what's really interesting to see is not only have we received our first national champion from sub-Saharan Africa outside of South Africa, we have someone from Senegal. This is truly the most globally representative prize we had in terms of the solutions that span across all planetary boundaries, and we're excited about the announcement of the international champions, which will take place in Davos 2027. What was interesting to see this year is that we had a real push for understanding how we can enable greater multilateral policies, but from private sectors, but also on a country level, where their work can actually shape planetary boundaries on the ground. And we then partnered with the UN University Center for Policy Research, PIC, and UNESCO in putting together this flagship report where we put together all the policy recommendations across 4 different pillars from our champions to shape a future, something that can be immediately deployed. And I invite you all to visit our website on the 4th edition page and download this. So with all that being said, the prize is now, we are actually in our 4th year, and in terms of our impact, this has been growing year by year. So the first thing which I'm very pleased to share is that we had a look at the number of co-authors and contributing authors who have participated in this prize since its launch, and we have over 20,000 scientists who have backed our mission. We have given out almost $10 million in prize money to support the research of 10 international champions. But most importantly, this is actually driving real world impact. I haven't shared the numbers here, but a lot of this money has been used in protection of floodplains across the Amazon, and also using this to lift tens of thousands of people out of poverty in Senegal, where schistosomiasis, which is a huge disease that impacts 200 million kids a year across Africa, is being treated because of the work that some of our champions have put in place. And this is also being picked up by policies. We're seeing that we have a significant impact where we've shaped over, well, almost 400 policy documents from UN agencies, the World Bank, the OECD, and national ministries of environment. And this is a really important thing about the prize. Impact can come from all different shapes and sizes. It could be on the ground and collective impact. It could be new innovations, but it also could be policy that's shaping a positive future. So, with all that being said, I'll get to crux with what is going to happen now and how can you be involved in ensuring that we can maximize this impact. This is in the brochure and on our website. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the most important thing for you to know now is register. If you're an institution that has not registered as an NMB, please do so. You have until the end of September, but do it now. The earlier you do it, the quicker you can raise your call for participation in your university. If you are already an NMB from previous editions, there is no need to re-register. It's automatically renewed. Once you join, you'll receive an information pack where you can then reach out to the lead scientists of the most promising research articles. And then at the end of October, beginning of November, is where you will then submit your three nominations to the RSC, where they will then move forward, select their top three, and submit it to the jury. So, in a nutshell, what are the next steps for you? Register. If you haven't done so, please do that. You then nominate your scientists. Remember, the date of acceptance for the article is between the 1st of November to the 31st of October. You invite them to apply by filling out the application form. It only takes about half an hour. It's incredibly short. And they can attach a PDF and they submit it to you. So it's the quickest way that anyone can win a million. Then, once it gets submitted back to yourselves, you review the applications and you share your top three to Russ and Nicola from the RSC. The one thing I want to make absolutely clear is that we are focusing on the research article, and the lead scientist is the person who best represents the prize. That does not mean it has to be the most senior person. It is a person who best represents the interests of the group and who is best placed to defend the research and to promote it publicly. So ultimately, it is the scientists who would have to agree amongst them, but the overall decision is by yourself as an NNB on who your lead scientist should be. In terms of the resource hub, we will share this with you as soon as A, you register, or B, you should have received it recently as you are an NMB. And here you will have the brochures, the application forms, and also the written communications, which you can use in your emails and also in your mailing lists. So to end this presentation, I just want to share a few words. It's really important that you get engaged behind this prize. You really need to use this opportunity to put forward the best research from your institutions, because now is the time for us to act. And this is the quickest way we can break down these silos and come together with scientific consensus on the state of our planet and what we should do to move the needle. In terms of the prize money, it goes directly to scale up and to amplify the impact of that work. It's only for the science. It's built from scientists for scientists to advance our scientific agenda. And last but not least, I just want to share that this is a prize that's a movement. Jean-Claude and I are here and we facilitate the prize. However, it's not owned by us, it's owned by all of you. It's owned by your scientists, and it's completely up to you to make sure that you can bring that science forward. So I hope that was clear. I rushed through that quite quickly. It's coming up to 7 p.m. here, and I drank my third coffee of the day, which was a bad idea. So I hope that's clear. I'm happy to answer questions. But Nicola, I guess I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, perfect, Gilbert. So we will wait after I'm going to talk a little bit about the RSC process, and then we'll move on. We'll open it up to questions. So I'll just share my screen now as well, and I'll touch on a few things from the RSC side. So you should now see on the screen the current list of Canadian National Nominating Bodies, or NNBs. If your institution is already listed, wonderful. Thank you for your continued participation. If your institution is not listed and you believe it should be, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to investigate that for you. If you are interested in becoming a national nominating body, we strongly encourage you to apply. So I will place the registration link for the national nominating bodies in the chat now for your reference. So please feel free to take note of that. So that should be available now. All Canadian institutions are welcome to participate as NNBs. You do not have to be an institutional member of the Royal Society of Canada. And again, once registered, institutions remain registered for future editions. So institutions that participated last year do not need to register again. We'll move on to the process now. Again, Gilbert touched on it, but I'll just reiterate some points. As a national nominating body, institutions may submit up to 3 nominations per year to the Royal Society of Canada.
The nomination process itself is intentionally streamlined. So applicants submit a concise application package to their institution, which includes the application form, a short description of their research and its impact, and the associated scientific article. Unlike other RSC processes, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, there are no reference letters or extensive supporting documentation requirements. The process is designed to remain accessible and manageable for both applicants and for institutions. From the institutional side, if you receive more than 3 strong applications, it would be up to your institution to determine which 3 nominations to advance to the national level. If questions arise during that institutional selection process, you're welcome to reach out to contact us at any time for clarification. Once selections are made, institutions simply forward the completed nomination packages to the RSC. You can do so either directly to my personal email or to the nomination email address, which I will share again in the chat, and which you can see on screen now. At that stage, the Royal Society of Canada will convene our selection committee, following a process similar to our many national awards and honors programs. The committee reviews all submissions received from across the country and selects the 3 Canadian national champions, which we will then forward to the international stage of the competition. So those nominations are, as I mentioned, submitted to the International Frontiers Planet Prize jury for consideration. In terms of timelines, I'd like to highlight one important adjustment from the one that Gilbert had highlighted earlier. So while the Frontiers Planning Prize indicates that an institutional deadline of November 1st, the RSC is requesting that Canadian institutional nominations be submitted by October 16th. So this earlier internal deadline allows sufficient time for our adjudication process, particularly as it coincides with a very active period of the RSC awards calendar with our celebration of engagement and excellence in November. So just keep that October 16th date in mind. So again, just to go over the key dates, October 16th will be the deadline for Canadian institutions to submit nominations to the RSC. In November, we will have our review by our RSC selection committee, and December 1st, we will submit those 3 national champions to the international jury. Again, as Gilbert mentioned, the champions are announced on Earth Day, and I believe the international champion moving forward will be now announced during the World Economic Forum annual meeting held in Davos, Switzerland. So that's where last edition's champion will be announced in January 2027. So again, just a quick recap, and I'll pause there. And so now we'll open the floor to questions. Thank you all for your attentiveness and for joining today's presentation. But if anything remains unclear, we'd be happy to address those points now.
I think we were crystal clear, Nicolas.
We may have been crystal clear. And again, I have included my contact information on screen there in my email. So if anything comes up after the session that you could possibly think of, feel free to reach out then. So maybe I'll just wait one more moment, just in case someone may be typing something, but if not, we'll consider it a closed session for today. Okay, well, seeing no questions, again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and for your interest in participating in this year's Frontiers Planet Prize process. Again, please do not hesitate to reach out if any questions do arise. We're always happy to assist, and we're also looking forward to receiving your nominations and to continuing Canada's strong participation in the prize. So thank you again, and we hope everyone has an excellent summer.
Thank you, everyone.